Li Xie, the former deputy director of the Central Literature Research Office, said that the reason why the archives about Mao Zedong were not fully released was not because he was worried about damaging the image of Mao Zedong, but because it might damage the image of some people. A reporter from Phoenix Satellite TV interviewed Liu Shaokai's wife, Wang Guangmei. Host: Madam, what do you think of Chairman Mao's big character poster bombarding the bourgeois headquarters? Wang Guangmei pondered for a moment and said, looking at today's society, Chairman Mao was right. The reason why a great man becomes a great man is that he can see the essence clearly and find a solution to the problem when others cannot see the essence of the matter clearly and cannot find a solution. French Nader Ransom said, if time can be turned back, half of the people in the world will become great men. Premier Zhou Enlai once said to Bo Yubo, you can express your opposition to what Chairman Mao is determined to do, but don't express your opposition lightly. In history, there have been several times when I thought that the chairman's decision-making was wrong. I objected, but after a period of time it proved that his decision was correct. I became more cautious in the future and did not object easily. But then again, I was convinced that the chairman was wrong, and I firmly objected, but practice proved the chairman is right. Therefore, you can object to the chairman's opinions and decisions, but don't object lightly. Premier Zhou also said, the Red Army walked out of the Valley of Death because it listened to Chairman Mao's words, not because it listened to any collective wisdom. It is because of Mao Zedong thought that the collective has wisdom. It doesn't matter if there are no Chinese leaders. But without Chairman Mao, the victory of the revolution would have been earlier. Whenever there is a crisis in the revolution, it is Chairman Mao's ideas and line that save the revolution and the party, not some collective wisdom that saves the revolution and the party. Zhu De said, it is true that we often argue with Chairman Mao. Chairman Mao is far-sighted and predicts things like a god. At that time, especially in Jinggangshan, when we often thought that Chairman Mao was wrong, we had to argue with Chairman Mao. Oppose Chairman Mao's opinions, but we are often proved to be wrong afterwards. Ye Jianying said, Mao, Liu, Zhou, Zhu, Chen, and Lin Tong are not only the last six of Chairman Mao, but also the old men and other people. I, Ye Jianying, are also one of them. In a certain sense, none of them are. It is not easy for us to admire someone from the bottom of our hearts as a fuel-efficient lamp. But in the long-term Chinese revolutionary struggle, everyone gradually got to know Chairman Mao. Together, these people have done the big thing of establishing a new China and starting to build socialism. Huang Keqian said, the anti-rightist struggle is necessary, but it has been enlarged and many people have been wronged. Chairman Mao cannot be responsible alone. I was a member of the Secretariat at that time, and some people were classified as rightists. It was passed hastily without careful consideration. How can I blame Chairman Mao for what I did wrong? During the Great Leap Forward, many comrades had a flamboyant style, distorted the facts to an astonishing degree, and made the mistake serious. It is also responsible. Wang Zhen said that Chairman Mao watched at least 50 years longer than we did. Around the 10th anniversary of the reform and opening up, Chen Yun said that China will lose the party and the country if it leaves Mao Zedong thought and socialism. Xi Zongsun said, adhere to Mao Zedong thought interpreted by Chairman Mao himself. This sentence is very meaningful. Science giant Jian Suisun said, if you lose Mao Zedong thought, China will be finished. Everyone knows that the United States and Japan are trying to prevent China from completing the reunification, and the two countries are still trying to pull more countries to intervene in the Taiwan Strait to stop China. Faced with this situation, the People's Liberation Army turned from defense to offense and switched its style of play, and the rules in the Taiwan Strait region for half a century may be completely abolished. Everyone knows that the United States and Japan are trying to prevent China from completing the reunification, and the two countries are still trying to pull more countries to intervene in the Taiwan Strait to stop China. Faced with this situation, the People's Liberation Army turned from defense to offense and switched its style of play, and the rules in the Taiwan Strait region for half a century may be completely abolished. What we are going to talk about today is that the United States and Japan are preventing the reunification of China. China has changed its tactics by turning from defense to offense, and the rules of the Taiwan Strait for half a century have been abolished. In order to prevent China's national reunification, the United States and Japan have taken great pains. First, the two countries have brought the G7 group together to put pressure on China on the Taiwan Strait issue. Pressure. However, After the United States and Japan conducted a series of operations, a simple move by the PLA directly shattered the illusions of the United States and Japan. According to domestic media reports, from June 8 to 9 local time, a mixed formation of 37 fighter jets of the People's Liberation Army cruised from the southwest of Taiwan Island to the southeast side of Taiwan Island through the Bashi Channel. This is not only another large-scale cruise operation of the PLA in the near future, but also a joint breakthrough of the so-called Central Line of the Strait by the formation of the PLA fleet, which is a simulated exercise with great practical significance. At the moment when the United States and Japan have made many efforts to try to threaten China not to take unified actions, the large-scale patrol of the PLA is obviously a practical action, showing China's response to the United States and Japan. That is, the PLA will never be afraid of the so-called deterrence pressure that some countries are trying to form, and will continue to firmly safeguard national sovereignty. Moreover, the more provocative external forces are, the more forceful the PLA will take countermeasures. It is unrealistic for some countries to try to prevent the Chinese mainland from recovering Taiwan through military deterrence. Judging from the two previous clashes between China and the United States, the PLA's new military strategy seems to have emerged. Perhaps not only in the Taiwan Strait region, but also in the Asia-Pacific region, the PLA's activity style will turn from defense to offense. In the past 2 weeks, there have been 2 intense close encounters between Chinese and American militaries. Once in the air over the South China Sea, the People's Liberation Army J-16 fighter jets intercepted the US RC-135 electronic reconnaissance plane by means of maneuvering intervention. The flight stability of the latter was affected by the maneuvering interference of the PLA fighter jets. The other time was in the Taiwan Strait. A 052D destroyer of the People's Liberation Army used violent maneuvers to insert directly in front of the US destroyer's route, forcing the US destroyer to brake urgently when it was about to collide. In these 2 incidents, the distance between warships and planes of the Chinese and American militaries was less than 150 m, which is equivalent to the point where the 2 sides would have direct physical contact if there is a little carelessness. In this regard, the United States is full of complaints. The US military accused the PLA of conducting unsafe and unprofessional operations, and complained that it did not understand why the PLA did this, because if this continues, people on both sides will definitely be injured. There is a possible explanation for this question from the US military, that is, the PLA may adopt new military tactics in response to increasing external military provocations. In the past, when the Chinese military faced foreign warships and aircraft approaching China's airspace and territorial waters, it was generally quite restrained, basically responding by means of accompanying flight surveillance and warning to drive away. In contrast, the Russian aerospace forces often use violent close-range maneuvers to drive out foreign warships and aircraft, so we will see that the United States often accuses Russia of unsafe interception. However, as foreign military forces headed by the United States are increasingly appearing around China, especially in areas around the Taiwan Strait, China's patience may have reached its limit. Some foreign media analyzed and pointed out that the People's Liberation Army will change its previous interception methods and use more violent means to deal with approaching foreign military forces. For this reason, the People's Liberation Army will even be willing to take a certain degree of risk. To put it simply, the Chinese military will be more proactive, transforming the previous conservative style into a more proactive style. Figuratively speaking, it is turning from defense to offense. Of course, we cannot obtain more specific information on the situation of the PLA's tactical change, so we can only speculate on it. A possible trend of change in the Asia-Pacific region in the future is that the PLA will be more proactive in its activities in the region, especially when operating in China's coastal waters and the Taiwan Strait. The PLA's naval and air forces will show a more proactive spirit of daring to fight. Perhaps in the near future, the United States and Japan will not only fail to achieve their goal of increasing deterrence against China, but they will also discover the rule in the Taiwan Strait region for more than half a century, that is, foreign warships and aircraft can enter and exit freely at will no longer apply. Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu has already stated that China does not oppose the freedom of navigation of all countries, but opposes the fact that some countries exercise navigation hegemony in the name of freedom of navigation. It is best for the United States and Japan to carefully taste China's speech, so as not to regret it when the time comes. According to a report by the Russian satellite network on June 12, citing data from the Stockholm Institute of Peace in Sweden, all nuclear powers are expanding and upgrading their nuclear arsenals. Data show that starting from 2023, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, India, North Korea, and other countries have a total of more than 12,000 nuclear weapons, of which about 2,000 nuclear warheads are on combat readiness. The report pointed out that in 2023, the United States and Russia will deploy the most nuclear bombs, of which the United States has deployed 1,770 and Russia has deployed 1,674. The nuclear weapons possessed by the two countries account for most of the world's nuclear weapons. In addition, the United States and Russia also have more than 1,000 decommissioned nuclear warheads. The number of China's nuclear warheads has increased from 350 to 410, and China may increase the number of nuclear weapons to the same level as the United States and Russia within 10 years. The UK plans to increase the number of nuclear weapons from 225 to 260. In addition, India and Pakistan are expanding their nuclear weapons, and India is trying to develop a long-range system that can cover the whole territory of China. Of course, North Korea, another nuclear-armed country, cannot be ignored. North Korea will conduct more than 90 missile tests in 2022. At present, North Korea has deployed about 30 nuclear warheads and has the ability to produce 50 to 70 nuclear warheads. It can be seen from this that the number of nuclear weapons in the world is constantly increasing, and the trend of proliferation is obvious. If countries do not exercise restraint, the risk of the world going to nuclear war is rising. In fact, after the outbreak of the Russo-Ukrainian War, rumors about the outbreak of nuclear war in the world have been heard endlessly. Russian senior official Dmitry Medvedev has repeatedly claimed that nuclear weapons will be used to ensure Russia's security. The Russian military's nuclear weapons have entered a state of combat readiness since the beginning of the Russo-Ukraine War. The United States wooed the United Kingdom to hold a nuclear war readiness exercise. The United Nations has repeatedly issued calls to avoid the outbreak of nuclear war, hoping that countries will not use nuclear weapons to deter each other. It is of course unwise for countries to fight a nuclear war. No country can win a nuclear war. According to the consensus of the 5 major powers, nuclear war cannot be fought, and all countries unanimously avoid the use of nuclear weapons. However, the United States does not seem to be afraid of a nuclear war. Earlier, U.S. National Security Affairs Assistant Sullivan said at the U.S. Arms Conference that the United States does not believe it is necessary to expand its nuclear arsenal and does not need more nuclear weapons than its opponents. Washington is pinning its hopes on quality. In Sullivan's view, the United States has sufficient nuclear weapons and capabilities to ensure security and defeat any nuclear and missile threats. In the past few decades, the United States has conducted many nuclear tests and developed new nuclear weapons. The United States has a variety of nuclear strike systems in the sea, land, and air, and has advanced anti-missile and early warning technologies, which can effectively intercept most missile attacks. But, can the United States stop Russia's Pioneer hypersonic missile? The quantity and quality of Russia's nuclear weapons are comparable to that of the United States. If there is a nuclear war, the United States may not take advantage. In fact, from the very beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, in order to avoid provoking Russia, the United States did not send U.S. troops to intervene. Instead, it supported Ukraine in the war through military assistance. The United States knows that it will do no good to provoke Russia. Fighting a nuclear war is not in the interests of all countries in the world, and will bring disaster to human civilization. According to the prediction of the American Natural Food magazine, if a nuclear war breaks out in the world, it will cause 5 billion casualties, and mankind will return to the Stone Age. Not long after the first 2 world wars, mankind should cherish peace instead of fighting each other. Fighting nuclear war is not the best policy. For the sustainable development of mankind, all countries should keep peace in their hearts. Japan's willingness to intervene in the Taiwan Strait issue is getting stronger and stronger. In order to let Japan clearly understand the consequences of doing so, the Chinese side used the Ryukyu as an analogy, which scared Japan and immediately became anxious. In recent years, Japan has become more and more rampant on the Taiwan Strait issue. Not only has it frequently made Taiwan-related remarks on international occasions, but it has also issued a joint statement on Taiwan related with the United States, blatantly interfering in China's internal affairs. Regarding Japan's erroneous actions, China has solemnly warned many times, asking Japan to respect China's sovereignty and not to do anything that damages China's core interests on the Taiwan Strait issue. However, Japan not only did not restrain itself, but became more arrogant. Some politicians even expressed their support for the United States in the Taiwan Strait conflict. In order to make Japan clearly aware of the importance of Taiwan Island to China and the danger of Japan's meddling in the Taiwan Strait situation, China played a very interesting analog. According to Japanese media sources quoted by TaiwanStrait.com, during a recent meeting between Chinese and Japanese officials, the two sides conducted in-depth discussions on the Taiwan Strait issue. China claims that the Taiwan Strait issue has nothing to do with Japan. It is just a means used by the United States to contain China, and Japan's ignorant intervention will only make it fall into a quagmire. However, after hearing the kind advice from the Chinese side, the Japanese side is still relentless and stubborn. In this regard, the Chinese side is no longer soft-hearted, and made an interesting analogy. China claims that Japan has an interesting place called Ryukyu, which does not belong to Japan's cultural circle, and has demanded independence in recent years. If this place's demand for independence is supported by others, what will happen to the Japanese side? Woolen cloth? Faced with such a statement, the Japanese side was taken aback and responded immediately. This is absolutely impossible, and Okinawa will never be independent. The Ryukyu referred to by the Chinese and Okinawa referred to by the Japanese are actually the same place. It used to be a country with a long history and unique culture, and it used to have close exchanges and friendly relations with China. But at the end of the 19th century, Japan incorporated Ryukyu into its territory through military aggression and colonial rule, and renamed it Okinawa. After World War II, according to the Potsdam Proclamation, Japan should give up its sovereignty over Ryukyu. However, in order to establish a military base in the Asia-Pacific region, the United States privately transferred Ryukyu to Japan and gave it so-called administrative power. To some extent, Ryukyu is Japan's most sensitive issue. Therefore, China uses Ryukyu as an example to send a clear signal to Japan: if you dare to challenge China's core interests on the Taiwan Island issue, then we also have sufficient reasons and means to deal with you. Don't think that you can meddle in our internal affairs at will, but we can't fight back against you. Don't even think that you can overturn the results of World War II at will, but we cannot defend historical justice. China's use of Ryukyu as an example is to give Japan a warning and let Japan understand that if it dares to provoke China on the Taiwan Strait issue, it will bear serious consequences. China has enough determination and ability to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. If Japan really wants to use force to intervene in the Taiwan Strait, the PLA will never show mercy. At the same time, China also has the right to make reasonable demands on Ryukyu in the international arena, so that Japan can taste the taste of being interfered in its internal affairs. I hope that Japan can take back its wrong words and deeds, and stop doing anything that harms China's interests on the Taiwan Strait issue, otherwise, Japan will pay a heavy price.